Are you looking for the best 2024 NFL playoff best ball advice around? Then get ready for the IDP Plus Best Ball Podcast Playoff Edition. Welcome into the Draft Lab, everybody. I'm Joel Worth, and this is the IDP Plus Best Ball Show. It is time for playoff best ball. The contests are up. Underdogs have been up for a couple days. DraftKings just dropped theirs today, I believe. It just came out. So it's time. All right, we got 4 weeks left in the regular season. It's time for playoff best ball. The best ball mania, the regular season best ball contests have concluded their regular season. We're on to the playoffs in those contests, and now it's time to start drafting some playoff best ball teams. It's really fun format. I really enjoy doing these drafts. So, and there's a lot of strategy involved. It's very much a game theory game instead of just a pick the best players game. So there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to go over. So if you've never done these before, grab a chair. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it so you can be as informed as you can be as we talk about playoff best ball. So let's bring this up here. This is the Underdog contest they've got going on right now. You've got the Gauntlet, which is the big one, $25 entry and $200,000 to first. That's going to be 90,000 entries in that one. And then you got the Mitten, which is $5 to enter and $50K to first. And you've got the Little Gauntlet, which is $10, 10 entry max, and that's $10,000 to first. You also had the Little Mitten. That's already closed. That was a $3. That was your kind of low dollar entry, 20 entry max. I did max that one out already, so that one's closed. I'll probably end up kicking a few more of these into circulation as these fill up. You can see the Gauntlet, the Mitten. These are the Little Gauntlet. These haven't really filled, aren't really even close to filling. So you got plenty of time yet. And there's going to be, like we said, they've got 4 weeks left in the regular season. We're going to want to, kind of spread out our entries and just get them through the rest of the regular season. As we get more information, we'll be able to make better choices, better draft picks. We'll be able to kind of visualize how the playoffs are going to play out. But you definitely want to get some. You definitely want to get some entries in now early, so you can get you possibly get some better combinations, better ADPs on players. As things are going to change, but we've got a pretty good idea on how they're going to play out. We can also look at the DK site. Now, these just dropped today. Their main contest is $20 entry, $500K to first. So that's pretty cool. It is 117,000 entries, but then you get a lot of other options as well. $333 option for those big spenders for 100K to first. And that's only about 1,000 entries. So if you've got that kind of cash to spend, that's a nice entry to get into. $50 entry for a 648 for 5K to first. And then for the lower stakes people, the $5 entry, 5 entry max, 4,700 entries there. So a lot of different options depending on what price point you want to go to. There's a lot of different things you can do here. So let's talk about the strategy and the basics and how we're going to get to our best teams. So it is it's basically a 4-round elimination tournament. There's no carryover. So there's no benefit to kind of maxing out and having a great week 1 and then just kind of hoping you can limp through the rest of the playoffs. It doesn't work that way. You basically restart after every round, and so there's you have to draft so you can win at the end of the tournament. And that's where the money is, right? If you look at the Gauntlet on Underdog, it's a $25 entry. If you get through round 1, it's $20. So if you get through round 1, that's great. But if you don't advance beyond that, you're not making any money. You're losing money. Now, it's better to lose $5 and lose $20 or $25, obviously. But we're not doing this draft to lose $5. We're doing this to win some big money. So you have to be able to draft to get a team through each week of the elimination tournament. So you want to be able to put a competitive roster on the field through each week of the tournament and into the final round, which is during the big game, during the Super Bowl. So that's how you have to draft. You have to draft some strategy. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to take Nico Collins and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, whoever," because they're the best players in round one and they've got the best matchups. That's yeah, sure. You may have the best highest scoring team in round one, but then your team is dead, and that's no good. So there's some real strategy involved here. It's not like I said, it's not just picking the best players. It's very much a game theory game and a strategy game to be able to kind of navigate your way through the 4 rounds of the playoffs. So let's talk about what your team is going to be comprised of. On Underdog, it's a 10 player roster. You're going to draft 10 players. It's 6-player drafts, and you're going to draft 10 players. So 60 total on Underdog. On Underdog, you start a quarterback, a running back, 2 receivers. That's wide receivers and tight end group together, and 1 flex. So that's 5 total, and then you'll have a 5-player bench. On DK, it's a little bit different. It's a 12-player draft, and these you'll start 6, and the tight end is separated out. So quarterback, running back, 2 receivers, tight end, and a flex. So it's a little bit different between the sites, but that's basically it. So it's fairly similar. You just have the extra basic tight end on DK that you don't have, where you have the tight ends grouped together on Underdog. So it's very important to remember when you're drafting that ADP is absolutely irrelevant. Does not matter whatsoever. It's only a list, right? Because ADP is just conglomerating all these drafts together and all these different strategies together. Strategy or not, some players are going to have strategy. Some players are going to draft best players. All gets pushed into one big pile, and ADP comes out of that. Your ADP should be dependent only on your strategy, how you want to put together, how you want to structure your team. That's all that should matter. So, yeah, you may have to scroll down 10, 20, 30 players to find the player that best fits your team. That's okay. Don't be a slave to ADP in any way whatsoever, because those the other teams aren't drafting your team. They're drafting a bunch of other different strategies. They're drafting a bunch of different ways. Somebody could be drafting a team for the Vikings to go to the Super Bowl. Somebody could be drafting for Denver to go to the Super Bowl. Whoever, it doesn't matter. You want to be able to draft the best team for you, for your strategy. So don't worry about ADP whatsoever. I can't stress that enough. It is very important to ignore ADP. Just draft the best players for your team, for your structure. All right, so let's talk about the overall strategy. Now, let's remember, like right now, let's talk about the playoffs. If the season ended right now, you'd have Kansas City and Detroit having a bye. In the AFC, Buffalo would be your 2 seed. Baltimore would be your 5 seed. They would play Houston. Pittsburgh would host the Chargers. And I believe right now Denver would be going to Buffalo. NFC, Detroit's your 1 seed, and they would have the bye. Philly would be the 2 seed. They would host Washington as of right now. And then you get the NFC North to be determined how that plays out for the 4 or the 5, 6 seeds. But right now, your West leader is Seattle. Los Angeles could get in there. San Francisco and the Rams or Arizona could technically get in there. So that's still wide open. And then the 4 seed is probably going to be the South winner, which is probably be either Tampa or Atlanta, obviously. So that's the way it is right now. But just remember that anything can happen in the playoffs. Just because you have the bye does not mean in any way that you're guaranteed to get to the Super Bowl. In fact, you're probably not. If you look at the last few years, last year Kansas City played in the wild card round. They went to the Super Bowl. 2 years ago, both teams that went to the Super Bowl had a bye. That's kind of the outlier, especially since we've gone to this 7-team 1-bye format. 2021, remember, the AFC 1 seed that had the bye 3 seasons ago was Tennessee. That wasn't that long ago. I don't think most people remember that 3 seasons ago the AFC number 1 seed was Tennessee. So you had Cincinnati and the Rams both play in wildcard weekend, both get to the Super Bowl. So it's absolutely possible for both teams to play in the opening weekend and make the final round. 2020, Tampa Bay played 3 road games and got to the Super Bowl. So that's absolutely possible. Don't discount teams like Denver, the Chargers, Baltimore, Green Bay, Minnesota that are going to be playing Washington. They're going to be playing on opening weekend on the road. It's entirely possible that they can get there. So, and even back in 2021, Remember when Jaquiski Tartt dropped that interception? If he had held on to that interception, the 49ers had beaten the Rams, they would have gotten the Super Bowl with playing 3 straight road games. So it's absolutely possible that you can get to the Super Bowl playing 3 road games. So we want to build a portfolio that can account for basically all these possibilities and all, not necessarily every possible combination, because we just want to be drafting good teams. But we don't want to have a high percentage of our profile being like, Denver, the Chargers, teams that don't have a really great shot to get there. But we want to account for it and have some optionality if that comes around. So the most important thing is to build for possibilities for the Super Bowl with advancing through the tournament in mind. So you want to be able, ultimately, like I said, the money is in the final round. You want to be able to field a full starting roster in the Super Bowl round, in the final game round, because it's certainly possible to win with 4 players in that round, 5 players in that round. If you're on DK, it's possible, but it's a very narrow, it's a tough needle to thread, right? So you've got to have really specific things happen. We want to just maximize our possibilities of winning the big money in that if we get to the final round. So you want to be able to have at least 5 players on Underdog, 6 on DK, making in that Super Bowl, in that final game on your roster. That's very important. You have to build around that eventuality. That's where like I said, you can't just take a bunch of Nico Collinses and Mike Evans and Justin Jeffersons and say, there's no way that's going to combination is going to come together and make for a viable team that's going to get to the conference championship round and get into the Super Bowl round where you can actually make some money. So you have to be building a team that can get out of round 1 and can get to the Super Bowl round with a full team. That's really how you're going to win money in this game. So let's talk about positional strategy for the basically 4 positions. Starting with quarterback. It's a 6-player game, and there's really, depending on how you look at it, now your options may vary or your opinions may vary. There's really probably only 5 viable Super Bowl quarterbacks. In the NFC, it's Jared Goff, it's Jalen Hurts. In the AFC, it's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Now, it's certainly possible, like we said, it could be Sam Darnold, it could be Jordan Love, it could be Jaden Daniels. That's all very possible. But if you look at the way drafts play out, those are the quarterbacks that are almost certainly going to go in the first 2 rounds, and they are the ones with the best. There are very few likelihoods that are not going to include one of those teams in the Super Bowl. So you want to have one of those teams. Now that begets the question. There's 5 of those guys, and there's 6 players. Somebody's getting screwed, right? Somebody's not getting one of those 5 elite quarterbacks. So where do you go if you don't get, if you're the one who the room doesn't give a quarterback to? Do you go down to Russell Wilson? Do you go down to, like I said, Sam Darnold, Jordan Love? You have to draft with that in mind. So if you get a running back in round 1, let's say an NFC running back, and you can't get, like we'll talk about Saquon Barkley in a couple minutes. He goes very early, but you can very much be in a position where you don't get a quarterback come back to you. So if that's the case, you really want an AFC quarterback because you don't want to have an NFC quarterback tied with your running back from Philadelphia because they both can't get to the Super Bowl round, and that's where you can get yourself in trouble. So you're kind of limiting yourself if you take Saquon Barkley with an NFC quarterback that's not Jalen Hurts. So if you do that, then you kind of have to move on to an AFC quarterback that's not among those top 5 that we talked about. So you're talking Russell Wilson, you're talking CJ Stroud, you're talking Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, whichever of those quarterbacks didn't get taken early. So you have to be okay with that. And you have to understand that you if you take a Saquon Barkley early and you don't get one of those quarterbacks, you have to be looking at an AFC quarterback that's to go with Saquon Barkley, and you have to be building around that strategy. You have to be building around that eventuality that your quarterback has to come from an AFC team if you want to get a full roster into the Super Bowl. Now you can take two different ones. You probably should. You can take Justin Herbert and CJ Stroud. You can take Bo Nix and Russell Wilson, just to kind of increase your chances of getting there, since none of those sub basically sub Lamar Jackson teams have a very high likelihood of getting to the Super Bowl, so you can kind of double up and help yourself get there. But we'll talk about that when we get to draft position. Running back. It is very important that you don't get boxed out of running back, because that's very possible. If you take, say, you take Amon-Ra St. Brown and you come around and get Jared Goff on the turn, it's like you're not going to get Jahmyr Gibbs. You're not going to get David Montgomery. He's probably not going to come back to you. Maybe once in a great while you'll have that opportunity. But in most cases, David Montgomery is going to go in the top, around that 2-3 turn, around picks, 12 to 13, 14, something like that. You're not going to be able to get him where you took an Amon-Ra St. Brown in that position. So you have to be able, you can't let yourself get boxed out of running back, because say if you want to draft for a Detroit, Kansas City Super Bowl eventuality, somebody takes Isaiah Pacheco. Now you're really boxed out of having a running back in the Super Bowl. So that's a real problem. That's something you have to be very cognizant of when you're drafting. Now, what's your option in the Super Bowl? Is it Samaje Perine? Is it Kareem Hunt? And, it's really tough. You can draft other running backs to help you get to the Super Bowl, but you're going to be talking having a running back that's not a real great option, that's not expected to score a lot of points in that game. Now, those players are still valuable. You still want to have those players on your team, the Samaje Perines, the Kenneth Gainwells, Justin Hills of the world, depending on how you're building. You certainly want those players on your team, but you don't want that to be your defining running back, because you have to have a running back, right? You have to start one. So if the player you're starting is like a backup, not a starter, you could be in some trouble in the Super Bowl round compared to a team that might have you just may get boxed out to where you have Gibbs or you have St. Brown and Jared Goff. Somebody else has got St. Brown, Jared Goff, and Isaiah Pacheco, or Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, whoever gets there, doesn't matter. You just have to be cognizant that you need a running back in the Super Bowl round. And it can be if you go receiver, quarterback early, it can be very easy to have the room box you out of having an elite running back in the Super Bowl round. So just pay attention to that. It's very important to be able to have a running back that fits your team and fits your structure and can get you points in the Super Bowl. If you want to, you can get there, but then you want to get yourself over the top and make some money in that Super Bowl round. So very important to keep that running back in mind. And then wide receiver, tight end, there's going to be a lot of options. That's where you can make your money, right? There's going to be plenty of options. You look at a team like Buffalo. That's why they're so attractive. That's why Josh Allen goes very early, right? Josh Allen obviously scores a lot of points by himself, but Buffalo's a very attractive option. They're probably going to play 3 games before the Super. They're going to probably play in the wild card, play 3 games into the Super Bowl round. So that, they're not going to have the bye. That makes them very attractive options. And their scoring is so spread out. You've got Amari Cooper, you've got Khalil Shakir, you've got Keon Coleman, you've got Dalton Kincaid. You've got a lot of different options at the receivers in the receiver group. So that's where you can kind of build your team out in that receiver group. So you want to keep that in mind. And like, if you take a Josh Allen early, then those Bills receivers aren't going to be in high demand. And that's where we want to ignore ADP, because they're very important to your team. But if nobody else wants them, you can kind of let them slide sometimes, and they'll come back to you, because they're not as if the other team doesn't have a Josh Allen, do they really want a Keon Coleman? Do they want a Dalton Kincaid? Probably not. That's probably not helping their strategy. It's probably not a player that they're really comfortable with helping them advance. So sometimes, you can kind of look at it and see, maybe I can push this guy. Maybe I can push this guy. Maybe I need to bring this guy up because he's really important. But maybe I can push this guy down because, you know, the other teams aren't going to be very interested in him. Um, it's also, you need to take into consideration who's going to get the bye. So right now it looks like the Lions and Kansas City. If you take Jared Goff, if you take um, Patrick Mahomes, you're going to need someone. You're going to need a quarterback to fill in week one in the wild card round because they won't be playing, obviously, and the same goes for the rest of the team. So if you if you take one of those guys, now you need, and it doesn't matter which conference they kind of come from. It's just because you don't care. Like, you just want to get one quarterback to the Super Bowl. I don't really care if I have two quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. It's not really important. I can only start one of them. So I want to get, now I want to look at the quarterback for the team that's going to score the most points in the first round, because I need to get through the first round for my, if I draft a bunch of Kansas City players, if I don't get through the first round, I get eliminated. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many KC players I draft and how good my Chiefs, team looks on paper. If I can't get through the first round, it doesn't matter. I'm eliminated. It's all done. So now you need to look at, what quarterbacks can help you in the first round. Is it a Sam Darnold? Is it Justin Herbert? Is it a Baker Mayfield? Is it a Kirk Cousins? Whoever. Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, whoever. You need to have an idea of who you want your second quarterback to be, and how you want to build out your roster, how you want to build out kind of a secondary option. Now, if I'm drafting, say, a Patrick Mahomes, I'm drafting a Chiefs team as my primary stack to get to the Super Bowl, it is kind of a nice option to draft another AFC quarterback, because and if I can build a draft another pass catcher to go with them, now that gives me some optionality that in case the Chiefs don't get there, I have a secondary option to get to the Super Bowl. So I'm trying to build a Chiefs Eagles team to get to the Super Bowl. Say draft like a Saquon Barkley and I get Patrick Mahomes. Um, Obviously, you're not going to get Jalen Hurts in that case. So I kind of want to draft another AFC quarterback, another pass catcher. So whether it's a Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton, Justin Herbert, Lad McConkey, whatever. I want to draft another AFC quarterback because that gives me an optionality in case the Chiefs don't get there. Now I've got an extra option to maybe get to the Super Bowl. Is it likely? No, but it's possible. And so as long as I'm having to draft another quarterback, I might as well draft a quarterback that gives me another chance, even if it's very small, to get to the Super Bowl round and be able to kind of get me through. And that can be kind of a differentiator as well, because how many teams are going to have Philly Denver stacks? It's not going to be very common. So if you can build out your Philly side enough that you can have, three of them and two or three Denver pieces, now you're looking pretty good, just in case the Chiefs don't get there. So if that's the case, if you're building, and same thing with Jared Goff, if I take a Goff team, then I probably want my second quarterback to be an NFC quarterback, a Jordan Love, a Sam Darnold, Jaden Daniels. Add in a pass catcher. If I can add in a running back, that's even better. Uh, I especially want teams that can score a lot in the first round and can give me an extra shot to get an extra Super Bowl eventuality, even if it's small. It just builds on my advantage a little bit, and that's ultimately what we're looking for, is to be able to build and get that best possible team to the Super Bowl round. So let's talk draft position strategy. I'm going to be honest, I hate the 1 and 2 picks. Like we talked about earlier, if you take Saquon Barkley, like the first two picks are usually, in most drafts, are going to be Josh Allen and or Saquon Barkley in some order. Could be 1-2, could be 2-1, but those are the two that are going to go first most often. If you draft Barkley, like we said, you're basically at the mercy of the room to whether you're going to get one of the top quarterbacks. Sometimes they come around, and then you can build out a really good team like that. Sometimes most of the time, those quarterbacks are going to get taken up around the turn. They won't get back to you. And now you've got to dip down into a Russell Wilson, like we talked about, a CJ Stroud, like we talked about. So you have to be comfortable with that if you're going to be willing to take a Saquon Barkley at 1 or 2, because that can happen if you take him at 2 sometimes. Like if someone takes Josh Allen number 1, now you've only got 4 quarterbacks to get around through the other. You have to get one of them through the other 4 teams. So that when you take Saquon Barkley at 1 or 2, if Josh Allen's the other one to go, that can happen at either position where you just get boxed out of those elite quarterbacks. So just be cognizant of that. Don't just jump into a draft and say, oh, Saquon Barkley's the number 1 ADP player. He's my favorite player in the playoffs. Just understand that you're probably not going to get one of those elite quarterbacks coming back to you. Very important. Then the other player at the top is Josh Allen. Obviously, it's really tough because it becomes really tough to kind of differentiate yourself. You have to be drafting very aware that you need to, because there's going to be a ton of Josh Allen teams at number 1, right? There's going to be a ton of Josh Allen, James Cook, Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman. It becomes very easy to build out the Bills team. So you have to be very aware of who you're going to choose as your secondary team. And it usually can't be the Eagles, right? Because Saquon Barkley is going to go before you pick. Jalen Hurts is going to go before you pick. A.J. Brown is probably going to go before you pick. You can probably get like a Devonta Smith, but then what's left? Dallas Goedert. So it probably can't be an Eagles team. It probably can't be a Detroit team. So if you take a Josh Allen at 1, now you're kind of committing yourself to a Buffalo, Minnesota, a Buffalo, Green Bay, a Buffalo Rams. If you like the Rams to get through and maybe get to the Super Bowl, you can do. I'm not saying you can do 10 Bills, but you can do. You can certainly fill out a roster of Bills, right? You can, like we talked about, their scoring is very dispersed. So you can take a Josh Allen, James Cook, Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, Dalton Kincaid team to the Super Bowl and have a reasonable chance of putting up a good score that scores highly. And you drag one player along, a couple players along from an NFC team. If you drag Devonta Smith from an Eagles team or David Montgomery from a Lions team, you can have a pretty good 6-player team, but it's not going to be very unique. So you need to understand that you need to find a way to differentiate yourself somehow. So you need to take, whether it's does Kenneth Gainwell differentiate you enough? Probably not, because a lot of teams are going to do that. You may have put yourself in a place where you have to take a Grant Calcaterra, or you have to take Will Shipley, something like that, because as you get down into those later picks, there's going to be a lot of teams that look just like yours. Assuming you get to the Super Bowl round, so you need to have a way to differentiate yourself with that kind of secondary team. If that secondary team is unique, if it's Washington, if it's Green Bay, that may differentiate itself, and now you've got some strong options to kind of mix and match in that game to put up the best points and be the best roster. But if it becomes a Bills, Lions, Bills, Eagles Super Bowl, that's when it becomes really tough to kind of differentiate yourself, and you're just going to have just a ton of teams that look exactly the same and score exactly the same. You're just going to be kind of in the middle, and you're going to be basically spreading out all that payout amongst a bunch of teams that basically score exactly the same. So be cognizant of adding someone at the back of your draft that can get to the Super Bowl round and kind of give you some extra points and differentiate yourself a little bit on the back end of your scoring roster. At the turn, again, you can do a double up. You can do if the room gives it to you, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. That's cool. You can do maybe a Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff. You can do David Montgomery, Jared Goff. That becomes very unique because David Montgomery usually doesn't go that early. So you can do some different things at the turn. You can do Patrick Mahomes, whoever you like as your usually Pacheco, because you don't want to get boxed out of running back, and he's probably not coming back to the turn if you don't take him there. But you do Mahomes, Kelce. I don't think you want to do DeAndre Hopkins because he'll usually come back to 18. So you don't really want to do that. But you can do a Mahomes, Pacheco. That's going to be fairly unique at a turn position, and then you can kind of draft out your secondary team from there. You differentiate yourself with your secondary team. So there's a lot of kind of double up options on the turn. You want to be careful of taking a receiver quarterback combination, because then it becomes really easy to get boxed out of running back. Like I said, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, like AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts. You can do that, but what's your plan? What's your plan going to be at running back? Because you're not going to be able to get the Detroit guys. You're probably not going to get like Isaiah Pacheco. So you're going to have to take a team. You're not going to get Derrick Henry. You're going to have to go kind of outside of the comfort zone Super Bowl teams to fill out your running back spot. So just be aware that if that's what you do at the turn, you need to be aware that you're going to need a running back somewhere down the line that fits on your team and makes some sense. And that can be tough to find, right? If you're doing, like we said, if you're doing Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're not getting Gibbs, you're not getting Montgomery, you're probably not getting Isaiah Pacheco. So what are you doing? Are you going to have to go to a third team, an outside team, to get that running back, or unless you're going to go with Craig Reynolds, Sione Vaki, unless you're comfortable with like a Chiefs Lions Super Bowl, and you're, like we said, if you're comfortable with a Samaje Perine, a Kareem Hunt, those are kind of sketchy, but they might be able to get you there. So if that's what you want to do, just understand that you need to get through to the final round and hope that those guys are scorers for you in the Super Bowl round, because are worth scoring, because they're going to have to put up some running back points, because the Pacheco team is probably going to be there. So you have to understand that you need to be able to find some running backs who put up points in the Super Bowl round. That has to happen, probably has to happen for you to be able to win. Now, let's talk about one more thing, and that's how to draft a double bye team. So assuming that you're drafting the two teams that are going to have a bye, they're going to have the best Super Bowl odds, right? You're going to have the best likelihood of getting the Super Bowl. Right now, it's Detroit and Kansas City. They're pretty heavy favorites to get the bye, and it'll be pretty heavy favorites to represent their conferences in the Super Bowl. So now remember, you need 5 starters. If those teams are in the bye, if you draft 5 of those, 5 of those teams to have in the Super Bowl round, that leaves only 5 players on the rest of your team to get you through round 1. So you have to be very cognizant that you have to stop, assuming you don't want to try and get through with 4 players. Now, you can try that. Again, it's a very narrow needle to thread, but you can try it. But in most cases, you're going to want to stop after you get through the Chiefs and Lions that you want, and then just draft high upside players for round 1. And you got to understand, a lot of those guys are going to go before you may have to stop drafting after like round 4 to stop drafting the Chiefs and Lions and start drafting some guys who are going to score in round 1, because otherwise those guys are going to kind of get gobbled up. And now it's really tough that you've got to draft 5 guys from the bottom of your roster and expect them to carry you through round 1. That becomes a really sketchy proposition. So let's say you do a Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown team, and you get Isaiah Pacheco on the comeback. So that looks really good. Then you can get, say, a DeAndre Hopkins. Now you've got the basis of a very good Super Bowl team, but how are you going to get there, right? How are you going to draft 5 players that can get you through round 1? Now, remember, one of them is going to have to be a quarterback, because Jared Goff's not going to play in round 1 in that scenario. So you're going to have to draft another quarterback, and you're going to have to draft 4 other players that can get you through in that wild card round. So you need to kind of look at, that's when you kind of need to look at what games are going to get played. Is it, does Mike Evans have a good matchup? Obviously, we kind of expect that the 4-5 round team is going to be, it's probably going to be in the AFC. It's probably going to be Baltimore and Houston. That makes Nico Collins a kind of a wild card weekend winner because Baltimore's pass defense is so bad. So he could be in a really good spot. Maybe you want to take a Tank Dell and hope that he scores a couple touchdowns or something like that against that kind of porous Baltimore defense. So that's where you need to now you kind of need to look at the game matchups, look at the likely matchups, and see, what looks good, and who can put up big points in the wild card round to kind of carry you through, because it's going to be really tough if you draft 4 for Super Bowl players in the first two rounds or the first, first two turns with your first four picks, Nico Collins is probably going to be gone. Justin Jefferson's probably going to be gone. So now you got to take some kind of high upside flyers to kind of get you through. Whether it's a Jordan Addison paired with a Sam Darnold. Can you get an Aaron Jones? You probably can't get a Josh Jacobs because he usually goes in the third round. So you've got to have a strategy. You've got to look at the games, have a strategy to get you through that wild card round. Then now you've got, three. If you can do that, now you've probably got three solid rounds of where your Chiefs and Lions are going to kind of carry you through, assuming they get to the Super Bowl. So just be aware that you can't really draft a secondary team when you draft a double bye team. Like assuming right now it's Chiefs Lions, you can't really draft a secondary team. You have to just draft 5 players outside of the the Super Bowl matchup that you have to kind of carry you through that wildcard round. It's very important to kind of think that through and understand how you're going to get through that initial round, because it doesn't matter how good. Like you could if you draft a team that's all Chiefs and Lions, you're not going to get through. It could be the best Super Bowl team on paper in the history of playoff best ball. And if you can't get through round one, it doesn't matter. So you have to have a plan to get through every round of the playoffs. Very important. It's very strategic. You have to build in a very specific way to get you through. So that's it. That's everything I wanted to hit on. These are a ton of fun. I can't recommend these enough. Doing the draft, there's so many ways you can do this, so many options. If you do the portfolio style like I do, where you draft a bunch of teams, there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of really fun combinations. Buffalo Rams, Buffalo Green Bay, Philly, and the Chargers. The Chargers are a really fun team to build. You can get them late and get McConkey, Herbert, and J.K. Dobbins late. So if that's a team you think is going to have a good first round matchup, you can do a lot of really fun stuff as like a secondary team, a secondary AFC team to kind of get you through round one and round two. There's a lot of really fun stuff you can do. Really enjoy best ball playoff style. It's just a really fun strategy. You really have to think about it. I'm going to recommend that you don't kind of double Q or triple Q yourself and try and draft 2, 3, 4 of these teams at the same time. You really need to be paying attention to how you're going to draft, what's going to be available to you in each upcoming round. It's something you really like. I do most of my drafts when I'm walking my dog, when I'm on my lunch at work. I really want to be paying attention to these when I'm doing these playoffs. So in those kind of situations where I can't necessarily pay attention to the whole thing, every pick all the way through, I'm going to do a battle royal. I'm going to do a wildcat, something like that, because I want to be able to sit down and really pay attention and kind of dig into these. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of kind of mental energy to get through these. So just understand that this is a really tough game to kind of like double Q, triple Q, and just have a bunch of drafts going at the same time. You're going to lose track, and you're going to come out with some just absolutely terrible teams in these things. In most drafts, you can look at the draft and say, okay, this team's terrible. There's just no way. It might get out of round one, but it's not going to advance past that. So just understand that the advanced structure is important as well. I should talk about that. In DK or in Underdog, excuse me, it's 2 of 6. I believe it's 2 of 6, and then 1 of 10, 1 of 10, and then like a 300 player final or something like that. I think that's the number. But understand your advance rates. On DK, I know it's 1 of 6, and the top player in each group advances in each round. So just make sure you know the rules. Make sure you understand how many you're going to advance out of each pod. That's very important as you go through the rounds. On Underdog, I believe it's 2 in the first round, and then 1, and then into the championship round. So understand that as well. Before we go, like we said, it is playoff time, and if you want to be able to travel and see your favorite team in the playoffs, the Packers probably going to be on the road, unfortunately. So if you want to take a trip to see your favorite team on the road, you need Expedia to get the best prices when traveling. We are thrilled with our partnership. If you need a flight to Denver, want to rent a car in Miami, you need a hotel in San Francisco, go to idpplus.com/Expedia and build the best package to travel to your big game. Again, that's idpplus.com/Expedia to get the best deals on travel. Thanks again for checking out the show. I'm Joel Worth, at the Joel Worth on Twitter, on the Blue Sky. Shoot me a DM if you want to talk playoff best ball. Always happy to talk. Check me out on Sunday mornings if you're into DFS, right here on the IDP Plus Bets Network with Jameson Hutchinson talking DFS every Sunday live. We go through start sit questions. We go through DFS questions. It's a lot of fun. It's a great show. Check that out if you can. Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's it for Playoff Best Ball. Good luck out there in those streets, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.